Hey everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive with us. Today we're going deep on something you probably use every single day, salt.
And we're going to find out if salt is just a mineral or something more.
Right. I mean, we all use it, but when I was doing the research for this one,
Yeah.
I found out that salt has this incredible history and spiritual significance in tons of cultures and religions,
Yeah,
like way beyond just making food taste good.
absolutely.
So I kept seeing this phrase, covenant of salt, come up a lot, especially in the Bible.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
The covenant of salt, well, it's in the Old Testament and it's really powerful. It refers to this idea of a sacred bond.
Okay.
Like, in a way, it goes beyond flavor
Yeah.
and it speaks to these ideas of preservation and purity
Mm.
and having a lasting bond with God.
So it's like a symbol of an unbreakable agreement.
Exactly. And this concept of salt being valuable isn't just a biblical idea. Even the word salary actually comes from the Roman practice of paying soldiers partly in salt.
Oh, wow. I never knew that.
Yeah,
So it was like essential back then.
absolutely. That's how essential it was.
Okay, so moving on to the New Testament.
Mhm.
Didn't Jesus say something about salt too?
He did. He called his followers the salt of the earth.
Right.
And that kind of suggests that Christians are supposed to be preserving goodness
Hmm.
and morality in the world.
Okay, so like they're supposed to have this positive influence or impact.
Right. Like preserving goodness.
Right, exactly.
Hmm.
But there's also that story of the prophet Elisha who used salt to heal the waters of Jericho.
Oh, that's a great example.
Yeah.
You know that story in 2 Kings? It isn't just about water. It's about Elisha showing God's power over spiritual darkness and using salt to break curses.
Oh, wow. So there's a spiritual aspect to it. It's not just like a physical thing.
Yeah, he literally throws salt into the water,
Hmm.
declares his faith, and the water is healed. It's incredible.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
I've also been reading about how salt plays a role in other cultural and religious beliefs,
Mm.
not just the Bible.
Oh, yeah. You find it all over the world.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, like, what are some examples?
Well, I mean, like, the diversity of beliefs and practices is just incredible. But one thing that seems to connect a lot of them are these ideas of purity, protection, and symbolism.
Okay.
So, for example, sumo wrestling.
Oh, yeah. In Japan.
Yeah, have you seen that?
Yeah.
They throw the salt into the ring.
Yeah. It's a really dramatic part of the whole ritual.
Yeah, it's all about purifying the space. It's about ensuring a fair fight. So they're kind of cleansing the ring of any negative energy or spiritual impurities.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, like, literally throwing salt.
Mhm.
There's an intention behind it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's about the intention and the belief behind it.
So what other cultures have these salt traditions?
Well, in the Middle East, exchanging salt is a way of making a really strong friendship pact.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It shows a bond that shouldn't be broken.
So, like, is that a symbol of loyalty and trust?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's like an unbreakable pact between people. And then you've got African tribes who use salt during their initiation ceremonies. So when someone's entering a new stage of life, salt is used for blessing and protection.
Wow. It's really interesting how one thing can have so much meaning for different cultures.
And then even in Hinduism, salt is used a lot for cleansing rituals, both at home and in temples.
Okay.
It helps to balance energies and ward off negativity.
So it seems like salt is this really unique combination of practicality and spirituality. It can be used to preserve food,
Yeah.
purify spaces, and even build relationships between people.
And what's really fascinating is that this idea of salt as like a tool or even a spiritual weapon isn't just an ancient thing.
Okay, hold on. A spiritual weapon.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
It's still relevant today. In many traditions, people believe that salt can absorb, transmute, and even amplify energy.
So like good or bad energy.
I'm not sure if I believe all that. But I have to admit, there have been times when I've walked into a room and I felt like off,
Yeah.
Like there was just this weird energy there.
Yeah.
So maybe there is something to it.
It's definitely interesting to consider, whether you believe in the spiritual aspect of it or not.
Yeah.
It's thought-provoking how energy might be present and affect us.
Okay, so how do people actually use salt for this?
Well, for protection, people might draw circles of salt around themselves or their home, or they might sprinkle it in the corners of rooms,
Okay.
or even put lines of salt at doorways to keep negativity out.
So they're setting up these boundaries
Exactly.
to protect themselves from bad energy.
Exactly. It's about defining a space and setting an intention.
Okay, so what about purification?
Yeah.
We talked about the salt baths earlier. But are there other ways people use it to cleanse themselves or their surroundings?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Salt is often part of rituals to clear negativity and bring back balance. Like, for example, some traditions use salt with burning sage,
Ok-
so the smoke carries away negative energy and the salt absorbs it.
Oh, so it's like a double dose of purification.
Exactly.
That's clever.
And then there are even some more personal practices, like keeping a small bag of salt on you for protection, or stepping over a line of salt before entering a space.
So again, it comes down to intention,
Yeah,
right?
yes, you're right. It's about tapping into the symbolic power of salt, whether that's through like a formal ritual or even just a simple act of personal intention.
Okay. This is all pretty in-depth, but before we go too far down the rabbit hole of all this, I want to touch on something else I saw in the research. Alchemy.
Ah,
Salt has a pretty important role in alchemy.
it does. It's actually considered one of the three fundamental principles.
Okay.
It represents crystallization and the physical body.
Okay, so full disclosure, alchemy is a little bit intimidating to me. Can you break it down for us? How does salt fit into all of this?
Okay, think about it this way. Alchemy is all about refining and perfecting things, both physically and spiritually. And the way that alchemists refine salt, taking it from its raw state to a pure, crystallized form, is a metaphor for spiritual purification and enlightenment.
Oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's like realizing that even something as simple as salt can be transformed
Mhm.
into something really amazing,
Yeah.
and that we have that same potential within us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we all have this potential inside us that can be refined and purified, just like salt. And we can do that through effort and intention.
Wow, that is a cool way to think about it.
You know, it's so interesting how many ways people use salt, like for spiritual purposes.
Yeah, it's like it's this like universal language,
Right.
but with all these different like dialects,
Yeah.
depending on the culture and tradition.
Exactly. And I think that's part of the power of salt, you know? It can adapt to all these different beliefs and needs, which is probably why it's been so important for like all of history.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's get into some specifics. In the research, I kept seeing stuff about using salt for like protection,
Right.
to ward off bad energy or even evil spirits. I mean, do people really believe that?
Well, you know, it's important to remember that belief systems and practices are super diverse. What might seem like really out there for one person is like totally normal and meaningful to another.
Right, totally. So, okay, let's say someone does believe in all of that, like
Mhm.
spiritual protection and stuff.
Mm.
How would they actually use salt for that?
Well, one common practice is creating a salt circle.
Okay.
That means you pour a circle of salt around yourself, your home, an
Mhm.
object, to create a protective barrier.
Like a force field made of salt.
Yeah.
That sounds like something out of like a movie or something.
Yeah, I guess you could see it that way.
Oh.
The idea is that the salt acts as this like boundary that negative energy or spirits can't cross.
Interesting. Are there other methods?
Oh, yeah, tons. Sprinkling salt in the corners of rooms is another one.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to trap negative energy so it doesn't like build up. Or you can place salt at thresholds like doorways or windowsills.
Okay.
And that prevents negativity from getting in.
So it's all about like strategic barriers. Like
Yeah.
you're setting up a perimeter.
Exactly.
You're deciding what kind of energy can be there and what can't.
It's like actively claiming that space.
Okay, so what about purification?
Right.
We talked about salt baths earlier, but are there other ways people use salt to like cleanse themselves or a space?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Salt's often part of rituals that are meant to like get rid of bad vibes and restore balance. For
Right.
example, some traditions use salt with like burning sage.
Okay.
The smoke carries away negative energy while the salt absorbs it.
Wow, so it's like double the power.
Yeah, exactly. A double dose of purification.
Clever. Okay, are there any other ways?
There are also more personal practices.
Okay.
Some people will carry like a small bag of salt with them for protection.
Oh.
Or they step over a line of salt before going into a room. It's a way of cleansing.
So again, it's about intentionality.
Yes,
Using the salt for a reason.
exactly. You have to be deliberate about it. You're engaging with that symbolism and power of salt. It could be a big ritual or just a personal thing you do.
Okay, so now I got to ask about something a little more controversial. Using salt to like deal with curses or hexes.
Yeah, okay. That definitely gets into specific belief systems. I mean, obviously not everyone believes in that stuff.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
But for those who do, how does salt work in all of that?
Well, in some traditions, it's believed that salt has the power to break curses, or like deflect bad energy that's being sent to a person. It could be a ritual like sprinkling salt around someone or bathing them in salt water,
Wow.
even like burning salt to create protective smoke.
So it's like fighting back
Right.
against a curse using salt.
Yeah, kind of like a spiritual counterattack, right?
Yeah.
You're using the salt to neutralize the negativity.
I'm curious, though. In the research, did you see any examples of salt being used for, like, bad stuff?
Oh, yeah, yeah. There are definitely accounts of salt being used in curses or harmful magic.
Right.
Usually they mix it with other ingredients too. The belief is that salt can really intensify your intention, so if the intention is bad, the results can be bad too.
That's kind of creepy.
It is a little unsettling, yeah. But it goes to show you that salt can be used in a lot of ways. It depends on the person.
So it's almost like a neutral force
Right.
that can be used for good or for bad.
That's a great way to put it. It all comes down to like intention and responsibility when you're dealing with anything that's thought to have spiritual power, even salt.
Okay, we've gone pretty deep into all the spiritual uses. But before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Alchemy.
Ah, yes. The mysteries of alchemy.
You mentioned that salt's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about physically refining salt. It also has something to do with personal growth.
Right. Exactly. Alchemists saw purifying salt as a metaphor for purifying your soul, getting rid of the bad stuff and like uncovering your true self.
So just like salt goes from being all rough and unpolished to this pure crystal, we can refine ourselves too and like shed negativity and reach our full potential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful metaphor, I think, and it shows us how powerful intention and dedication can be on our own spiritual journeys.
It's almost like we should change the saying, like instead of you are what you eat,
Right.
it should be you are what you season your life with.
I love that. That's perfect. It's about being mindful of what we let into our lives.
Yeah.
Both physically and spiritually. Making choices that help us grow and feel good.
That is such a good point. I'm feeling inspired, honestly. But I know we still have more to talk about.
We do. There are some really interesting parts of salt's history and symbolism that we haven't gotten to yet, and we'll be talking about those in part 3.
Okay. So don't go anywhere, listeners. We'll be right back with even more amazing insights about salt. It's amazing to think about how many cultures all around the world use salt,
It really is. We've talked about Japan and the Middle East, Africa, Hinduism, but honestly, there are so many more. It seems like salt has a special place everywhere.
And I feel like all those stories really tell us a lot about what different cultures believe in. Like we talked about the Salt Covenant. In the Middle East,
Yeah.
it wasn't just like a casual promise.
No.
Sharing salt was like this sacred ritual.
It was a big deal.
Yeah, it showed that you were loyal. And it was supposed to be unbreakable.
Right. Breaking a salt covenant was a huge offense. Like, they took it super seriously.
Wow. So it was like the ultimate symbol of trust and honor.
Exactly. Salt wasn't just, like, a thing you put on your food. It represented something much deeper.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
So salt was a way of showing trust and commitment. But I also read that it was used in hospitality rituals, too.
Oh, yeah, all the time. Like, when you had a guest, you would offer them salt as a way of, like, welcoming them. Like, hey, you're safe here. We're friends.
So it was like a peace offering.
Exactly. It's about creating this bond.
So it seems like salt was kind of like this social glue,
Yeah. Yeah.
bringing people together, whether it was through friendship pacts or hospitality or these really intense covenants.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a way of connecting with each other.
It's pretty incredible that something so basic could be so meaningful.
It really is. And it wasn't just about relationships between people.
Oh, right, yeah.
Salt was also part of a lot of ceremonies and rituals that connected people to, like, the divine. A lot of cultures would offer salt to the gods.
Oh, okay.
It was a way to make sacrifices pure, or to please spirits, or to ask for blessings.
So it's like salt was this bridge between the real world and the spiritual world.
Right.
I'm also seeing that salt was used a lot for healing,
Yeah.
not just like metaphorically,
Right.
but as actual medicine.
People figured out a long time ago that salt had, like, antiseptic properties way before we had modern medicine.
Oh, wow.
They used it to clean wounds, soothe sore throats, even to help with skin problems.
It's funny how we just think of salt as this like everyday thing,
Right.
but people relied on it for like survival and well-being for centuries.
Totally. And they really valued it. Salt was used as money, people traded it for goods, some even fought wars over it.
Oh yeah, that's where the phrase worth their salt comes from.
Exactly.
So salt has this really rich history, cultural significance, practical uses. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. And I think it shows us that even ordinary things can have really interesting stories and deep meanings if we take the time to think about them.
I completely agree. This deep dive has been incredible. I feel like I've learned so much about salt.
It's been a pleasure talking about all this with you. It's amazing how something as simple as salt can connect us to so much of human history and experience.
That's a great way to put it. Well, a huge thank you to you for being here with us and sharing all your knowledge. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of salt. We'll be back tomorrow with a brand new topic. But in the meantime, here's something to think about. If salt has been this powerful symbol for so many cultures for so long, what does that tell us about our own human need for connection and meaning? And how can we use the everyday things in our lives to connect with those deeper parts of ourselves? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. And if you're looking for more right now, you can head over to www.saltultimatemasters.org/coaching